Well, folks, the saga continues, and I know we were thinking, oh, we hope Steve doesn't respond to Noi when she sent out that post, or I should say, reply talking about he was broke, and she saw the bank statements and the tax records, and we knew it was bullcrap when we saw it. But you know what? You can't call nobody, especially no man. You can't call no man broke and think he's not gonna come back and say something. So I don't know if y'all have IG, but here are the posts here real quickly so you can read what he wrote, trying to bring the temperature down, trying to tell her to please stop. Really, she's just doing more damage than good. But here are the posts. You can pause it if it's going too fast. But I'm going to get into this next part of my video responding to how the heck did we get here? Married at first sight. And I know y'all are saying, is she still talking about knowing Steve? But let me tell y'all, I am pivoting. Because one of the things when I started this YouTube channel, I really want to do is I like relationship shows. I like learning things. Even as a woman that's been married 10 years, about to be 11 in September, I still like to learn things. And let me tell you, reality dating shows, there are lessons in them. And let me tell you, on this last season of Married at First Sight, besides Katina and Olajuwon, Noi and Steve has been one of the biggest lessons for people to learn. Whether you are the Noi in this situation or whether you are the Steve in this situation, there are lessons. I hope this Noi and Steve is a lesson to a lot of people out here, either dating, whether you're the Noi in this situation and you're masking and you're being fake, or if you are the Steve and you in a way got duped by a masking person and they want authentic. Steve, whether you think he's got money, whether you think he's broke, whether you think he's a vagabond, no matter what you think of him, he came authentically. Same with Olajuwon. They came authentically and then they worked on being a better person from there. But when you show up inauthentically and you try to pretend you're someone that you're not, then you're never open to growing, because in your eyes, there's nothing wrong with you. You don't need to change. And that's who Noi is being right now. She still doesn't recognize who she is and how she needs to become a better person so that she can actually attract and sustain the relationship that she wants. But what I want to talk about are the top 10 warning signs with Noi, where she presented quite differently than what she is. I call it masking in dating. And let me tell you, it's one of the most dangerous things you could come up against in dating. And people have to become more adept, if you're out here dating, at figuring out when people are masking and when they're being authentic and real. And let me tell you, one of the lines that Olajuwon had in this season, which I told you I always liked Olajuwon, was he had one of the best lines. He said, don't be afraid of the person who shows you who they are. Be afraid of the one who hides who they are. And that's who Noi was all season. I'm going to go over the top 10 things because people need to learn to not just listen, but to watch. Because oftentimes people deceive you with words, but it's hard for them to deceive you with their actions. I know some of you caught on early on with Noi. I was one of the ones that was 2 feet in with this couple in the very beginning. You got to remember, they slow walked us on Steve and Noi because it wasn't even until episode 8 that we even got rid of Alyssa. Now remember, their marriage didn't even last long. They went 8 episodes with Alyssa. So they really slow walked us on Steve and Noi. But once we finally started getting more footage on them, we quickly started figuring out some things about Noi. And that's around the time I started saying, Houston, I think we have a problem here. But I thought we could fix it because I just knew that Steve was so steady Eddie. And I really thought that maybe Noi would come around, but it seems as if it just never came around. She always showed up as someone that she wasn't. And you had to figure her out bit by bit along the way. It's also kind of what happened with Jasmina as well. The first time I got fooled with Noi was really through the experts, and I'm not going to blame the experts. A lot of people like to blame the experts, but sometimes the experts are just a victim of it, as we are, because the experts only know what the people tell them and what the people present. Noi presented herself as a risk taker. If you remember, hello Noisy. She was adventurous. She was outgoing. She was a risk taker. They paired her with another risk taker, which was Steve. Outgoing, a risk taker, adventurous. We quickly found out that Steve was the real deal in risk taking. Risk taking to the point that he left a job and was going to become an entrepreneur, left a steady career. He's probably been in for 8 or 10 years. And he was going off and starting a new adventure. Now, say what you want about Steve in terms of should they have accepted him on the show? Maybe not. But one thing he was authentic and he was real. At no point ever did Steve try to pretend he was a different person than he was. On the other hand, Noi told us she was a risk taker in love. They told the story with her that she went to Mexico. She went to Europe to find love. She was adventurous. Now we find out she couldn't even move in an apartment with Steve and take a risk on him. So we start to realize that Noi wasn't as big of a risk taker as she led on to the experts and as she led on to us. I think when Noi ran up against Steve, she came face to face with the real risk taker. I think it was good for her to run around, talk about she's adventurous and she's a risk taker. But when she came face to face with a real risk taker, she quickly realized she wasn't the risk taker in the group. And I believe that made Noi feel insecure and jealous. That was number one, where I think Noi became jealous of Steve because he was the real risk taker in the group and he had evidence to prove it. Number two was when that whole tattoo fiasco happened and Alyssa started talking about the psychic said that her mate was the one with the lion tattoo or whatever tattoo it was. And all of us remember that Noi cried and had a fit over it. They didn't show it on camera, but we kept saying, why was she so upset? Why would you cry over something like that? At the time, we gave her a little bit of a leeway. I know I did. But as I look back on it, that was another sign, being a little bit jealous of Steve and attention Steve was starting to get. Because by this time, we were starting to like Steve. Steve had some swag. He wears a little shirt unbuttoned. He had some pec muscles. He'd be with his gold chain. Steve had swag. Let's admit it. Steve had swag. He had that calm, cool, collected personality, everything. And I really do believe some of the ladies were probably saying some good things about Steve, and Noi got jealous. That's why when Alyssa said that tattoo, I believe she was so rattled by it, she cried and had a fit. That was another time that she became jealous of Steve. Number three, when Noi kept presenting herself as a risk taker and she was adventurous and outgoing, and then here we are on this honeymoon and we start to realize Noi is afraid of heights. She doesn't know how to swim. She doesn't like water. She doesn't like things that go fast. And I remember one of my videos, I was saying, well, how the hell are you adventurous and a risk taker if you don't like these things? I mean, aren't these almost like the basis of people who are risk takers? You don't have any fear. Noi was starting to show up as a fearful person. So I started to say, we were told Noi was fearless and adventurous. And I'm starting to realize she's none of those things. That was my number three clue. And I think what happened was Steve was authentic. He really was a risk taker. He really was adventurous. He went out on the road for 4 months. He liked to do all those things. He liked to do the sports. He liked to go fast. He liked the water. He liked heights. He was the real deal and Noi was the fake deal. By episode 8, Noi was really starting to have breakdowns because in episode 8 was when Noodlegate came. And all of a sudden, Steve was like, I'm doing all the cooking and cleaning and you can't even cook no noodles. There you go. So here you have now, Steve is the superior cook in the house. He can actually cook better than Noi. And it bothered Noi even more because she wasn't the number one person in the house who had the best cooking skills. We found out Steve did. In fact, Steve was doing all the cooking for all the couples at retreat and everywhere else. Steve was always doing the cooking because he was superior in the kitchen, and Noi was jealous about that as well. And what did she start doing? She started going on IG then to try to tear him down because what was happening within the group is Steve was being put up on a pedestal And Noi didn't like it. Steve was the cook. Everybody liked Steve. Steve was handsome. Steve was outgoing. Steve got along with people. And let me tell you, Noi was not the queen bee in the circle, and she started becoming even more jealous of Steve. It only got worse when Steve started taking Noi around his home and childhood home, and Noi got to see a stable upbringing Steve had, this loving family, middle-class lifestyle, stability, and guess what? Noi was jealous because it was quite opposite of her life bringing. Now, we know she was a refugee. Nothing is her fault. Nothing is her parents' fault. But what happened to Noi is Noi was jealous of it. She was jealous of the upbringing that Steve had, and you saw it play out on screen. It became so evident. She didn't praise it. She didn't say, oh, this is wonderful. She was jealous of it. And it only got worse. Noi was talking about how she was a singer and she was dancing and she loved to sing and all this other kind of stuff. Then she finds out that Steve had a whole rap group. He had a #1 song in his town he lived in. Noi was jealous. Then she says, well, I'm going to take him to dance class because I know I can dance better than him. And guess what? She found out that Steve could dance better than her. Good Lord, this girl became more and more jealous as the season went along. And the more jealous she became of him, the more she tried to get back at him. That's when we really started to see more of this passive-aggressive behavior from Noi. And really what it was jealousy. We go on to the episode when she went in with the phone and was taking a picture of Steve laying in bed. And she was jealous that Steve was laying in the bed in the middle of the day and she was working. But you know what she was even more jealous of that I pick up on now? Is that Sushi, her beloved dog, who she loved more than anything, was lying in the bed with Steve. Not her. Sushi wasn't laying at her footstep. He was lying in the bed with Steve. And let me tell you, that invoked another level of jealousy to Noi, because here it is, her beloved dog, and here this dog is curled up with Steve. So now even Sushi likes Steve more. This girl was fit to be tied. She was not only jealous of Steve's lifestyle, which she was, that he could lay in the bed and she had to work, and Steve had enough money to be able to still pay his portion of the bills, and even more so, still take her out on dates, still buy her gifts. And she was jealous of it. Nothing Steve could ever have done would have ever gotten away of this jealousy that Noi has of Steve. She would never get away from this jealousy. Steve would have to do so much that it would become, he would have to give away so much of who he was in order to make her feel happy and make her feel elevated, that he would lose himself in this relationship. Noi was absolutely jealous of the life, of the upbringing of Steve and the life he was living. She couldn't stand it. I'm going to tell you, after the season wrapped up and their IGs became public, you know another area of jealousy I think happened to Noi? When she found out that Steve had more IG followers than her. Now, the girl who loves IG and social media, who couldn't wait to be on IG and social media, turns out that more people follow Steve than follow her. 38,000 follow Noi. I looked it up. 52,000, 53,000 following Steve. I'm telling you, maybe to us old people, IG followers don't mean a lot to us. But young people like Noi, who wants that following, all that, I'm telling you, that rattled her, that after all this season, everybody liked Steve more than liked her. And let me tell you, it became then she also wanted to tear Steve down more and more and more. And the last moment that's happened so far is when she made that announcement of her divorce, and Steve came back with a more thoughtful response than the one she sent out. And all the outpouring of support that came for Steve, she couldn't handle it. So what does she do? She goes to her go-to, and that's the put down. She comes back out and she starts talking about he ain't got no money, he ain't got this, he's broke, he's all these kind of things. I believe she's embellishing the story. I never believed that Steve was a millionaire, but I absolutely don't believe that he's broke. And the fact that Noi is trying to spin this narrative, this is all to get back at Steve, because this is the same old stuff she's been doing since day one. And that is, let me put down Steve so I can elevate myself. This is a lesson to everyone out here dating. Don't look at what people say. Watch what people do. Because as long as you're dating out here and you just listen to them, you're going to get fooled by the noise of the world. You're going to get fooled by the noise of the world. Noise of the world. The noise of the world, they get left by men after year 1 or year 2, because what they do is they mask in the beginning of the relationships. They don't come to the relationship authentically. They come presenting a person who they want you to like, but that's unsustainable. It's unsustainable. Once people realize who they are, that's when the relationships start to fall apart. Now, when I hear that Noi had to go to Europe and Mexico because she was so adventurous to find love and she was willing to do anything for love, I now realize that wasn't adventure, that was desperation. It's okay to want to be someone different than who you are. I always tell people they need edits, they need to change to blend with other people. But become that other person authentically. Don't just try to pretend you're that person, because you're not going to be able to sustain that. And once people see it, they're going to leave it. They're going to flee from it. Become the change you really want to be. Don't just try to show it on IG. Just don't talk about it. Be about it. Anyway, that's it, y'all. Talk to you later. Bye.